Hello and welcome to Grouchy Geeks, episode 69. It's been a while, but my name's Scott. Joining me, as always, it's Steve. How's it going?
All right. Yes, we're back again. We took a break. We just decided to do these as and when we feel like. So here we are.
Yeah,
doing it again. Back in the saddle or something.
I'd imagine there's thousands of people just like on the edge of their seats right now.
Hello, faithful listener. You're here again, and so are we. We're back with some news and reviews, and then for our main feature, we're going to talk about Quantum Leap, but the new Quantum
Leap.
Okay.
So my main piece of news, and this came from a WhatsApp message that Barry from Geeks Syndicate sent me yesterday.
Yep.
Which is that there's a brand new bang up to date Picard season 3 trailer.
Yes.
I don't know if you watched it.
Yes.
What do you think?
It was on my news to discuss with you as well.
Brilliant.
Yes.
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned only because of this is the end, and if they don't do any more, it'll leave a sour taste in the mouth, and they're never coming back because you know he is as old as Father Time. They all are, to be honest. Some bits of it look good. Are we going to reveal any of the twists from the trailer or not?
That's a good question. Maybe we don't reveal the very final one, which was a little bit bemusing anyway.
Yeah.
But we know all the main cast are coming back, right? That doesn't feel like a spoiler.
No, it doesn't. I liked it generally. I think the villains that they've shown look quite intriguing. The difficult characters in there. There's some change of the cast, which is quite odd. In terms of the characters have evolved from last time we saw them, which you would expect over the period. But equally, I don't know. I just worry about them. They're all going to be on a ship, but it's not going to be the Enterprise. They're all going to be part of a crew, but it's not their crew. He's not the captain. Someone else is the captain. So I don't know what their roles are going to be in all of this, really. What did you think of it?
So I'll tell you what my overriding concern is, because I generally thought the trailer was brilliant.
Right.
I really liked it.
Okay.
And under different circumstances, I would be saying that people hated, generally, I think, I don't think it was just me, but people in general hated Picard season 2. It was just terrible.
Yes, it was.
And part of me wants to say that they learnt their lessons in Picard season 2, and they've dealt with it all, and this is going to be a much improved Picard season 3. If it wasn't for the fact that they filmed them back to back,
yes,
so they had no opportunity to learn those lessons.
No.
So despite it, I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks great. But given that they've had literally zero opportunity to reflect upon what they did wrong in season 2, that in itself is concerning. But as somebody that honestly thought, I'm not even going to attempt to watch season 3, I'm at least willing to give it a chance.
Yes.
The thing that most concerns me is, so Worf appears and he looks fantastic. Right? He looks brilliant. And then he says this line, apologies for the spoiler, he says this line where he's like, I'm a pacifist now.
Yes.
And what I'm desperate for them not to do is not to make him the comic relief of season 3. Like you can actually, you can genuinely imagine part of his story arc as being he does all this stuff. He's from a warrior race. He was raised by humans.
Mm-hmm.
He goes through this very complex growth process, and he decides that he's now a pacifist.
Yeah.
And if they treat that with respect, it's a really interesting. I have the advantage of seeing Steve absolutely crack up. If they treat that with respect, it's a really intriguing idea, right?
Yes, it is.
There's lots of merit to it.
Yes,
but the genuine danger is that they're going to make him the comic relief.
Yeah,
because they just haven't learned anything from season 2.
They break that covenant that is set up in the trailer later on in the trailer with Worf's character, was showing you it was meaningless and it was throwaway.
Yeah, and Michael Dorner's Worf deserves more respect than to make him a figure of fun. So that's the one thing that I genuinely didn't like about it. I like that they had, female empowerment is a big thing now, quite rightly. I like the fact, but we don't tend to have very many female villains. And the fact that they seem to have a really, really interesting female villain, I thought was really good and really interesting.
Yep.
So I mean, as somebody that would have said a few months ago, I'm never ever going to watch it under any circumstances. They have managed to suck me in, so I'm hoping for the best, but I'm fearing the worst.
Yes, essentially the same. I think I'm hoping that they've learned, as you said, they've had no time to reflect. So I suspect it's just going to look good on the surface, and the whole show will be surface, much like
that's the danger, right?
Was a giant danger cluster fudge. It was an absolute train wreck. Yeah, but anyway, so this is just a bit of a discussion thing I wanted to ask you about. Are you aware that Daredevil is back in various capacities within the MCU?
Yes, I was aware.
Okay,
I've not engaged with the MCU since Endgame. So I watched a couple of episodes of WandaVision.
Yep.
My wife watched Loki whilst I was in the same room, but I can't claim to have watched Loki.
You didn't miss anything. You're all right.
Right.
Don't worry.
But it's not. Yeah. So I kind of sort of knew that he had a presence, but that's the extent of my knowledge.
Have you seen the new Spider-Man film, the third one with Tom Holland?
No Way Home?
Yes.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that is worth watching. It's one of the few things after Endgame that are worth watching. I won't spoil. Here's a tiny spoiler because I have to for this story. There is a brief moment, one scene for about 3 minutes that Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox's Daredevil, is in it. That was his first appearance in the MCU since Disney took over. He then appears in his full costume as Daredevil in one episode of She-Hulk, which is currently airing now, which I have watched, but it's the...
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
that. I watched it, so you didn't have to. He appeared in the yellow and red, or the gold and red costume of old from the comics, which was new, which was nice. Next year is the Echo TV series, which is a character from Hell's Kitchen, and Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin will be in it, and so will Charlie Cox as Daredevil be in it as well. And in February, they start filming Daredevil Born Again for airing in 2024, and there'll be 18 episodes, they've said.
Wow.
So he's had a presence in one film, one TV show, another TV show next year, and then his own TV show in 2024. So he is very much back in the MCU.
That's brilliant because, I'm sure we've talked about the movies till the cows come home, but the TV shows have just left me very bored, basically. But the only, the first of the MCU TV shows was Daredevil, and that was the one that they really did right. That and Luke Cage, maybe, arguably. But But that first one was a masterpiece,
Mm.
and they just have singularly failed. What did you think to She-Hulk? I've not watched it. I've the only so generally nowadays, and I think I've told this to you before. Generally nowadays, my enjoyment of the MCU comes from watching the Critical Drink on YouTube and his analysis of it. I find that I get more enjoyment from him expressing his opinions in a very entertaining way than I do from actually engaging with the shows themselves. And I'll be honest, I've heard nothing but bad things about She-Hulk.
I find it to be an abomination. And ironic, the abomination is in it. Briefly. Tim Roth turns back up very briefly as an abomination. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. I watched the first 2 episodes and then stopped until I knew that the Daredevil episode came out. And he was really good because so she's a lawyer, criminal lawyer. Within her TV show, in court, he points out how awful she is as a lawyer and defeats her on a case within like 3 minutes because she hasn't done her homework, she hasn't questioned her client, she hasn't done anything, and gets the case thrown out and he wins. Then there's a bit when they go into a big fight and he says, okay, I'm going to sneak in. Can you come in, subtly afterwards, and just take it gently because you're very strong. And if you break things, a lot of property damage. Yep, she says, no problem. He goes in, it's all moody, he's taking people out left, right, and center very, very quietly, and then she bursts through the ceiling and sets the building on fire and blows it all up and causes tons of property damage. And as a lawyer, there again, surely you'd be like, oh, wait, I shouldn't do that. And then she apologizes to him for messing it up. And it just, it goes from there. So he was really good. She was awful within her own show, which doesn't really reflect very good on the writers.
Yeah.
I mean, Tatiana Maslany's wasted in this show.
I mean,
she's spoken many times about her talent.
We've spoken about how brilliant she is, and I would say that she is the best. Her performance in Orphan Black is the best acting role I've ever seen in anything, literally without exception. And there's no way that there could ever be another show that would stretch her and show those talents like it did.
This does not stretch her in any capacity or show her talents in any capacity.
That's the thing. There's no way that I can. There's no way that I can possibly lay blame to her for her performance. It's the writing and the direction that she's receiving because she is, as far as I'm concerned, a genius. But there's nothing. I genuinely haven't heard a single positive thing about it.
Some people like it. I am not one of them. Basically, that's my summary of the show. But Daredevil was good. I'm glad he's back, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in the future in his own TV show next in 2024.
Brilliant.
So, any other news? I've got 2 other bits.
So I haven't watched them. All I was going to say is I've heard bad things about Lord of the Rings and good things about House of the Dragon, but that's not a personal thing. I don't know whether you've watched them.
I have seen Lord of the Rings. I have not seen House of the Dragon.
And what do you think? Is it worth $1 billion?
Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
No. It's okay. There are some bits that are very good. It's very, very slow. And yes, people are going to go on about, oh, Tolkien's slow and blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's 2022. You can't just say that as an excuse. Plus, it wasn't written by him. And if all they're doing is trying to ape him, they've failed to understand the current audience or the market. A lot of special effects, a lot of money poured into the special effects. Some of the characters start off absolutely awful and you don't care about them. And as the show progresses, they get better and better. Performances are all great. Costumes great. Set is amazing. Stories up and down. Slow. And then you kind of hit a big event. And then you get a couple of interesting twists. So I'm watching it because I kind of want to know how it ends this season. I think there's one more. But I'm not gripped in the same way as I've watched 4 episodes. So I watched 7 or 8 episodes of House of the Dragon. Of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I've watched 4 episodes, I think now, of Star Wars Andor,
which I've heard really good things. I've not watched it, but I've heard really good things about it.
I absolutely love it. It's the best Star Wars since Rogue One, The Mandalorian, and before that, Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
That's how far back I'd go. Because it's really complicated characters that are layered. There's broken families. It's clever dialogue. There's this undertone of melancholy and sadness in the whole thing, even from the theme tune. Because if you've seen Rogue One, then you know the ultimate fate of the character, but that doesn't matter, because in this, that you've got a really scrappy set of, it's not a spoiler, a scrappy set of people going up against the Empire. They're not trying to defeat the Empire. They're trying to get one over on the Empire and do a job against the Empire. But because they're so powerful and they're so big, and this group have so little, the odds of them succeeding are tiny. It's desperate and it's appalling, but it has to be done. And it's just really well written. And it is slow, so you could say compared to, Rings of Power, it's the same kind of thing. I actually care about the characters in all of this. It's just really well done TV, and it just hangs together so well. So I definitely recommend watching Andor.
Brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah. Right, I've got 2 other bits of news. One is Black Adam's coming out soon with The Rock. Have you seen the trailer for that?
I haven't, but The Rock for me is the new. He's the closest thing that I can think of that is sort of the inheritor of the Arnie crown. But I will watch a film because he is in it.
Yes,
and I can't think of any other person that is enough of a draw to me that I don't need to know what the film's about.
Yep.
I will just watch it because he is in it, and I absolutely love watching him. I think he's brilliant. So I will watch it despite knowing nothing about it. You're now going to tell me that the trailer's terrible.
No, trailer looks amazing.
Brilliant.
The cast looks amazing. Special effects are really good, and his character Black Adam is very, very powerful. And he dropped a very subtle, not unsubtle hint on Instagram or something today. He was talking about his character, saying he's the most powerful character in the DCU, and then he goes, "Well, on Earth," and then he gives the eyebrow.
Right.
And so everyone's saying, "Does that mean Henry Cavill's back as Superman in the suit?" And there's a story floating around that apparently The Rock went all in. This is there again, it's probably speculation. It might not be true, but someone behind the scenes basically said when he signed up for Black Adam, he said he wouldn't do it unless they got Cavill back as Superman, and he wouldn't accept anybody else in the suit. It had to be Cavill. And he basically kind of went to town and said, "No, I will not do this film. You will get him back in and he will be Superman." So there's a rumor that in the 3rd act of the film, Superman turns up and it's Cavill. Amazing. And it's really kind of like The Rock basically went to bat for him. Like, if it's true, if it all turns out to be true and it's not one of these fake wish stories, that's fantastic. That's the kind of thing that Arnie did back in the day for some of his people that people don't know about. Like Michael Ironside has spoken about years later after the fact, things that Arnie did for him and other people. And we just never knew. That's just the kind of guy he was. So if The Rock has actually done this, that just, as you said, he's someone else that's just inherited that crown of being someone who's a really good guy to have at your back and to have in your corner. So I really hope it's true. But yeah, I'm also going to go and see that film.
I just love the guy. I think he's awesome. And like I say, he's the one person working in front of the camera. Like I would go and see a Chris Nolan film because it was Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Or Denis Villeneuve, obviously. But in terms of people in front of the camera, he's the only person that is that sort of a draw to me. I just think he's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Last bit of news I had is Supernatural went on for 15 seasons and then finally ended.
That was the 5-season arc that went on for 15 seasons, right?
10 years longer than the original 5-year pitch that Eric Kripke did, and then said, "Yep, wrap it up at 5, and then I'm done." And they said, "Great," and then he said, "I'm off at 5," and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to keep going." Anyway, 10 years later, it finished. Here's the thing. So I stopped at, I don't know, 7, 8. I gave up and stopped. There's a spin-off show. They've tried 2 before, and they didn't hold water. They didn't find any traction, and they died a death. They're now doing a show called The Winchesters, which is a prequel show featuring their parents, Sir Sam and Dean Winchester's parents, as hunters. The fun part about that is they featured the characters several times throughout the show as different ages and their grandfather and stuff, but we didn't really know much about their story. So this is going back and showing them falling in love, fighting demons, being hunters and stuff. At New York Comic Con, Jensen Ackles, who's also the narrator of this show, turned up on stage talking about it with all of the actors. And he said, coming in season 2, they've just cast who's going to be playing my grandfather in the show. Now, in the original show, it was Mitch Pileggi, who's a very, very large man.
X-Files. Yeah.
Very large man. And he was brilliant as the grandfather. So in this, they've cast a younger version of the grandfather. And I'm thinking, who are they going to get who's a very, very large man? And then Tom Welling walks on stage. I'm like, oh my God, it's Tom Welling. And he's an enormous, enormous man who's very, very good at what he does. And so he's been cast. Now it's a show. Now I'm interested in watching it. Before I was like, yeah, I don't know. But if Tom Welling turns up, he was so good in Lucifer fairly recently. He did some turns in that. Always a great guy from Smallville and everything on up. And there again, everything you hear about him as a man and as a person is amazing. So what his interactions with the fans, everything from, Michael Rosenbaum, everybody else talking about him and saying he's just such a top dude. And it kind of intrigues me. So now I'm probably going to watch that. I don't know when we'll get it in the UK or what channel it's on, but yeah, I'm gonna check it out because I want some more demon hunting for a change.
Brilliant.
I need that in my life at the moment. Right, that's all the news I had. Shall we go on to our main feature?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Welcome back. For our main feature, we're talking about the reimagining, reboot, redo of Quantum Leap. Now, initially, I was quite anxious and worried about this until we were told that Donald B. Bellisario was involved in the show and one of the other original directors and producers on the show. And they then announced that this was, in fact, a continuation, and it was not a reboot, which also won some favors with me. And Scott and I have now watched the first 3 episodes, and we'll give our initial thoughts on what we think of the show so far, but also where it might be going in the future. So how do you feel about it now that you've watched 3 episodes?
So to summarize it, it's brilliant. It just,
that's it, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
it feels like the original, and the original is sort of threaded through the whole theme. They're doing some things that are different and interesting. But when you watch episode 1, literally the first 2 seconds they mention Sam Beckett.
Yep.
That's how it starts. And they had a woman's voice in the original Quantum Leap. They had a woman's voice introducing it. I don't know if it's the same person. But if it's not the same person, it sure as hell sounds like her.
I think it is her.
Okay.
I think she's one of the original producers who also did the voiceover.
Right.
I think she's involved as well as Donald P.
So it is right from the outset and all the way through. It like you were saying, it's not a reboot or a reimagining. It's fully a sequel.
Yes.
And something that I really like about it is so
spoilers. We're going to spoil it, we should say.
So unlike the very first season, there's very little. So the very first season was extremely episodic. So there wasn't much of an overarching plot.
Yep.
You would just leap in, do something, and then leap out again. And the trend nowadays is that you do a 10-episode TV show, and it's like a 6-hour-long movie. It's not like a TV show anymore.
Yeah.
But this has more continuity than the original does, but it's still super episodic. I really like. And Steve and I have talked on WhatsApp about the in the last few years I struggle a little bit with watching some things. But this is no problem at all, because it's like it's very, very self-contained.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely brilliant for me personally, and some of the challenges that I now have. It's brilliant. It's better than I could have possibly ever hoped for.
Yeah.
I think it's great. So you would tell me that you hated it.
Yeah, it's awful. No, I loved it. So the interesting thing about it, I think I sent you an article on this, is that what we've seen as episode 1 was originally shot later on as a later episode 6, I think. And when they showed the pilot to the network, they were okay with it, but they weren't completely happy. And so then they thought, oh God, we're gonna have to reshoot the whole thing. And the people behind the show said, no, we can still use that episode. And they retooled it and they reshot a couple of little bits so that the first episode is now episode 6. They just kind of added some bits and pieces in. And as you said, it's very connected to the original because, as I said, we're going to do some spoilers. It's a continuation of the program, we should say, that they've mentioned Scott, Dr. Sam Beckett, that he's gone, he's disappeared, and he kept leaping and never came home. They don't really understand how the project worked, but someone has basically resurrected that project, but they can't get it to fully function until something happens. I won't say exactly what, that suddenly it begins to work, but they can't control the leaps. Now, the main difference between this show and the original is that we only ever saw the show from Dr. Beckett's point of view, and he leaped into someone. We saw his story. We never saw the future, except in a couple of small segments when he leapt back into his own body. We never saw anything else. And because they've set the show in 2022, not the weird distant future, whatever that was in the show, I can't even remember when it was originally, we get that half of the show, which we didn't have before. We're suddenly getting them trying to solve the technology to work with Ziggy, which is back, the original machine, to get it all working, and they can't understand why. And then it goes back to Dr. Ben Song, who's the leaper this time. And we didn't have that before. We just see Al come through the door. We never really saw what was on the other side of the door most of the time. And now we do, which is different.
And we know, so Dr. Ben Song, who is great in it. Like, in my mind, you can never beat Scott Bakula as Sam Beckett, but he's up there in terms of just pure likability.
Yep.
But we know that he sort of went into the chamber at a time that he wasn't supposed to.
Yes.
Because he's got a plan. But he has amnesia, so all that he knows is all that he knows is basically what Scott Bakula knows. He's just leaping from person to person and solving those problems.
Yes.
But the thing that motivated him to go into the chamber is this sort of wider plan that he has that we don't really we sort of get little flashes of insight into, but like the original Quantum Leap, it lives and dies on his character, and he's great. He's so likable. Raymond
Lee is just a brilliant actor. He embodies the idea, the role of Dr. Sung as this someone who is intelligent and challenging, but also compassionate, but also brilliant. But Song has these gaps in his mind, and he doesn't really know things. Every now and then he gets a flash of something, and he'll say something to his hologram. In this case, is his friend Addison. It actually turns out to be his fiance. He doesn't remember, of course, but then he'll say something. You can see she's struggling with it, and so we get more of that too, which we did get in the original. because Dean Stockwell, of course, Al, struggled the fact that his best friend didn't always remember him, and that was quite tough. So we get to see that again, which is nice, but they haven't ignored anything. This is the right way to do a continuation of a show. This is the right way. We've said this. You pay homage to the past, you build on it, and you do something new. You take it forward. So it's not just a case of, oh, it's another guy, he's lost his memory, he's leaping through time, so what? He's helping people. Yeah, that's fun. And what? There's an and what? There's actually something else on top. They've layered things from a previous show, characters that are in there with other new characters, but there's something else on top of that. There's a goal and a purpose for him leaping. We don't know what it is, but they've laid the groundwork, and that's what I appreciate.
And that, again, without spoiling it too much, that wider plot relates to the original show in a really interesting way.
Yes,
and they do some really this is like a super minor thing, but they do stuff like in the third episode, he ends up in a boxing match, and and there's two things about it that I really like. So one is he gets the crap punched out of him, and then the referee says, because the referee's worried about him being like having concussion, the referee says, "Tell me what your name is." He's like, "Ben Song." Oh no, wait a minute.
No.
And I thought that was a really lovely. He was like clearly sort of confused and on the back foot, and he just answered honestly, and then I just thought it's such a minor thing, but it's very nicely done. And there's another bit, again, apologies for spoilers, but in order to basically win the boxing match, they can look at the footage of the boxing match, because it happened in their, in the future. It happened 50 years ago, so they can watch the boxing match. But because Dr. Song has a photographic memory, the reason that he has, and that they make this point that because he leapt into somebody's body, he has the physical prowess and the fitness of the person whose body that he leapt into. He hasn't spent his whole life boxing.
No.
And so the way that he progresses the boxing match is by watching the video of the original boxing match and basically memorizing exactly what he should do at every moment.
Yes.
It's things like that are just really nice little touches.
Yeah. It's well written. This is a show that
really is well written.
We've said this on other things. They lean into it. They give you too many nods. The Han Solo thing we've talked about, and all that kind of thing, where they just kind of wedge things in to try and. This is when they do it right. This is when they actually say, "Okay, we need something in here, but it has to fit with this story. There has to be a reason for it." And so there's things like we see the rest of the team in the future who are dealing with it, but they hint at other things, but they don't go into too much detail. So. Magic, who's Ernie Hudson's character, talks about the fact that the army knows we're drawing lots of power on this, but I'm making up excuses as to why. And you're thinking, okay, someone's funded them to do this for something else, but they've been lying to people. So that's another thread they're going to pull on later on at some point. They're building lots of things in that they can use for the future so that nothing comes out of the blue. If they don't get Scott Bakula in at some point,
I mean, he's
such a crying shame for the show. Come on.
I mean, his head is in episode 1, right? Just as like
hologram.
just as an image and hologram. But they've So we already know that Scott Bakula is Sam Beckett in that universe.
Yeah.
They can't not do it. I reckon he's going to be in season 1. And they're just playing their cards really, really close to their chest. Right. And they've told Scott Bakula, look, just
deny everything.
Keep your mouth shut.
Are you Scott Bakula? No. Oh, right, okay. I also like the fact that they acknowledged certain things. Like there was limitations in the original show that said he can only leap within the span of his own lifetime. And because of something that they've done to the tech this time, Dr. Song can leap further, and it's like he goes back to the 70s in the third episode and saying that's before, or the 60s even, I can't remember, he said that's before his own lifetime. He shouldn't be able to do that. So they've broken one of the rules but there's a reason for it. They haven't just kind of said, yeah, fine.
Yeah, exactly. They don't ignore it. They say, he shouldn't be able to do that. That shouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
So something's happened that we don't properly understand. So they embrace, they fully accept and embrace the fact that something is happening that they don't properly understand, rather than just sweeping it under the rug and not really caring because continuity is no longer important and they can just do whatever they think looks cool in an episode.
Yeah. And all of the characters have an arc. They're all progressing. There's the team. We know about most of them now and who they are, and there's the strengths and weaknesses. There's Addison, who's his... that's the interesting twist. She was supposed to be the leaper. It was never supposed to be Ben Song, but he went into the machine because of something time critical, and he hadn't told the others, and he'd been keeping secrets, but he chose to leap. So he hasn't had any of the same kind of preparation or things that she has. It's some good new twists on the show. I really do like it. And I'm okay. So speculation, where do you think it's going?
That's a really good question. So one of the things, so in the original Quantum Leap, he was just randomly jumping. He just ended up doing this, and he was, like the voiceover says, he's hoping that the next leap will be his last, and he'll get home.
Yep.
But there was no continuity to it, and something that they explicitly state in episode 3 is, he's leaping with a plan. He's got amnesia, so he can't remember the plan. But there is a pattern to what he's doing, and it's going to take him a long time to get home.
Yep.
But that's because he's plotted out some sort of trajectory that has a meaning around him trying to get to a particular point. So there is more meaning to it. Yeah, so that's one of the really interesting things, that he's got amnesia, so we can't get any explanation from him about the point of it. And to some extent, it's almost like as they uncover things, they're keeping from him what they're learning.
Yeah.
But we know that he's leapt with a destination in mind, and that he's jumping all around to try and get to this particular spot.
Yes.
But we don't know why, and he doesn't know why, or even that he is trying to do that. But it's really, like you were saying, the fact that there's more of a focus on what's happening to the people that he's left behind, that makes it really interesting. What they're doing. But it's not like I was saying. I like the way that I do like the way that it's 90% episodic, with just a little bit of backstory sort of peppered in there as it happens.
Yeah, I think it works. I think it keeps the spirit of the show by making it episodic, but there's still threads that carry over a little bit more than in the original, but they set it up from the beginning. As you said, the first season of the original show was almost all, you could watch it in any order and it really wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah.
To some degree you can with this, but then there's all of the bits in the present with the people you've left behind that you wouldn't really understand in the same way because things carry over. Do you have any theories about what this destination is that he's trying to get to? Because I do.
Okay, I'm really interested. So I haven't thought about it deeply, but it must involve Sam Beckett, right?
I think it's a fixed point in time where they know Sam Beckett will be.
Interesting.
And that he's leapt in many other places, they know that. But I think it's one of these ones where if they're trying to pinpoint one way, he'll be there for enough hours or a certain period of time or something. But basically it's one of these things that they know he will be there. And if they can get there, then they might be able to get some questions answered that they couldn't normally. Or because if they're trying to leap beyond Ben Song's lifetime, they have to go further back to get into Dr. Beckett's lifetime. So maybe that's why they're trying to find this fixed point, because it's further back than they should ever be able to go. So it's taken longer. Maybe. It's got to be him. It has to be.
It has to be. It can't not be.
It wouldn't make any sense for it to be anybody else. It has to be him. What else would be so important fixed in time that he had to get back to. And they're restarting this project in the first place because they didn't understand it.
I mean, there isn't. Correct me if I mean, I know we've only watched the first 3 episodes, but I don't think there's a single episode in the first 3 where they don't mention Sam Beckett at some point.
So.
Like,
No,
it's not that they're obsessed with it. It's not like there's no other thing going on in the story.
Yeah,
but they're constantly referring to him in every single episode. So
yeah.
It can't not revolve around him, surely.
Yeah, and the couple of the plot twists, especially at the end of episode 3, that was fascinating. I'm not going to spoil it, but what we saw, and I suddenly thought, yeah, okay, there's so many links now to the original show. It's crazy. They're doing something there that we haven't seen before either. And I think I know what they're going to do, but I'm not going to say. I'll talk to you off camera about that. But some fascinating ideas, and they're playing with it probably more so than they did in the original, because they can add more wrinkles in. Technology is much better, obviously, but the leaping hasn't really changed, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. That he looks in the mirror.
He's still in the he's still in like the white bodysuit, right?
Yeah,
he jumps.
Yeah, and the fancy tech and all great, great. And he looks in the mirror, and it's the other actor looking back, and you have to mirror each other, and it's all brilliant. It still works. It's still perfectly fine. You don't need to have any more high tech than that. Even the leaping, the colors, and the way he leaps is almost identical to the original, which I love. He doesn't say "oh boy," which was, you're like, if he didn't say it, you'd be upset. He hasn't yet, but he still could. But he doesn't say it every episode.
So they say, so at the end of episode 1, when he leaps into somebody on board a spaceship,
yes,
he goes, "Oh,"
and then he goes, "shit," and it just cuts out as he's doing that. But that's as close as you probably get. But I'm okay with them not doing that. Probably a step too far on the kind of homage to the original, but I'm okay. There's other stuff in there that keeps me happy. It's really good. I'm really excited to see where it goes. I want to know more. I'm going to keep watching. And they've got to get Scott Bakula in at some point. They have to.
I mean, it is better than I could have possibly hoped for. Right? Yeah. I was hoping it was going to be good, but they've done such a good job of it. They really have.
Yeah. This, and then you look at Picard season 2, and you're like, what went wrong? Come on, what's wrong with you? But anyway, right. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. Other than a recommendation to watch it.
Yeah,
definitely. As of the first 3 episodes, we might be.
Yeah, we're hooked. We've seen 3 episodes.
It's great. It's so well done.
Yeah, watch that and watch Star Wars Andor. The rest, Anyway, right. That's it for this episode. We'll be back in future at some point. I don't know when we decide to do another episode. But in the meantime, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.